Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7 by 7. So one of the things that I've talked about over the years as a secret ingredient of Star Wars' success is its comparative scarcity, all right? There are already 24 James Bond movies, and I think that's not counting maybe Never Say Never Again, although that maybe is counting that one, and also the Casino Royale version starring Woody Allen, which is not really a James Bond movie, blah, blah, blah. But with a couple of dozen of those, and how many Star Trek movies do we have now? 13 of them, I think, is the total at this point. Yeah, that sounds about right. And you could name other franchises that have a lot of installments compared to where Star Wars is at. Star Wars was only at 6 movies in 2005, and so that would have made it, then, go ahead to 2007, and that's 30 years and only 6 movies. I mean, that's not a heck of a lot at all, is it? And certainly the quality of the story is a big part of that, and the serial nature of the story is also a part of it too, but it's scarce. Like, it's a huge event when it comes back around. And so it was a huge event when it came back around in 1999. It was a huge event when it came back around in 2015. And now it's not as huge an event because it's happening every year. It has happened every year since 2015, in 2016 with Rogue One, 2017 with The Last Jedi, 2018 with Solo: A Star Wars Story, 2019 with Episode 9, and who knows what will happen in 2020. And then potentially between Rian Johnson and Benioff and Weiss, we could have alternating years between those groups. So 2021 through 2026, we could have a Star Wars movie every year all the way through at least the end of the first quarter of this century, which on the one hand is super exciting because, oh my gosh, we have fans have been comparatively starved of cinematic Star Wars content for the majority of our lives, and now it is so plentiful that, it's like being spoiled in a way. And certainly in our media-saturated age, there's a case to be made for the idea that, well, maybe scarcity isn't as big a thing, and maybe it isn't as valuable a thing as it used to be because it's easy to forget stuff now, right? I mean, we just blow by so many different movies, so many different franchises. I mean, how many people are going back and watching all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, going all the way back to the original Iron Man movie and saying, hey, like, we've got to watch all these movies, and oh my gosh, they were so awesome. And, how long is that going to stand? How many years from now are people going to be going, wow, that Iron Man, oh, that was the most amazing movie ever? I'm not trying to knock Iron Man or anything like that. I'm just trying to suggest the idea that as we have gotten more media saturated, content has become less precious, and therefore the content that is being created is less precious in a way. And so it's not going to sink in, it's not going to matter as much. And the idea of scarcity, well, that was a potential antidote to that situation. So maybe the whole foofara around Solo: A Star Wars Story not doing as good at the box office as everybody would have hoped, and maybe it's just making Lucasfilm give slightly more consideration to what standalone stories they're pursuing. I mean, again, we don't know the real story behind what's happening inside Lucasfilm with the Star Wars stories, and I'm sure they're not put on hold, but I'm sure they're being a little bit more thoughtful and careful about how they approach them. I mean, there's every reason to take a breath. I mean, we've got time, right? We've got 18 months until Episode 9, so between the release of Solo and the release of Episode 9, yeah, the clock is ticking on that one now. It's a little bit less than it was, but man, they've got time to breathe and time to figure this out. They've got, Jon Favreau's series to be working on. They've got Star Wars Resistance coming up in the fall. So there's ample opportunity for them to step back and take a breath and say, okay, what do we need to do with these standalone stories to make sure that they are the absolute best that we can possibly deliver, that they are the absolute right stories that we need to tell, and get them back on track. But unfortunately, that plays into the whole scarcity issue and the lack thereof that we are now experiencing with Star Wars. And again, I think it's fantastic, and I'm sure people who suffered through the dark times when there was no Star Wars for a decade or more are absolutely beyond themselves. But younger generations that are not going to experience that lull, where is Star Wars going to sit in their hearts? That's the thing that I am a little bit concerned about for our beloved franchise, that there is no opportunity to create the deep longing for Star Wars based on the scarcity of it. But like I said, it's a new age, a new time, and a new generation of audience, and maybe they'll react differently from this. Maybe it'll stick in their hearts and minds the way it is stuck in the hearts and minds of you and I and of prequel trilogy era fans. It remains to be seen. But I would say if I've got any particular abiding concern about Lucasfilm or about Star Wars and about how it carries on over the next 10, 20, 50 years, well, I would say that's probably it right there. So that's pretty much it right there. Like, briefly and succinctly, my thoughts about Scarcity is the secret ingredient of Lucasfilm's success with Star Wars, and the possibility that maybe, just maybe, the way things are going media-wise, generation-wise, and Star Wars production-wise, maybe that secret weapon isn't going to be available to them anymore. I'd love to hear your thoughts about whether Scarcity has been a secret weapon to Star Wars' success, so please drop me a comment wherever you're checking this out. And that'll do it for today's episode, as you may have gathered, over on the audio version at sw7x7.com/iTunes or wherever you like to listen to podcasts. I'll be doing Last Jedi trivia there, so do check that out. Otherwise, it just remains for me to say thank you so much for watching, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.